Hello everyone, I'm Tom Bowers. If you don't know me, I'm from Hypothesis Media, and we're an interactive consultancy at the intersection of content and tech. So I've got a panel that basically embodies both of those areas, which is going to be a very exciting session. It's going to be very interactive, so if you don't know what that is, you shouldn't probably be in this room, but it's a QR code, so please scan it and get involved with the first question. And this session's going to be about watching the watchalongs. So there's a powerful shift happening in how we experience live sports at the moment. It's no longer just about watching the game, it's about shaping the experience around it. From YouTube watchalongs to real-time fan interaction in venue and on screen, Gen Z and global audiences are redefining what it means to be a sports fan. And fans just want more than passive viewing. In this session, we'll be exploring the rise of interactive formats, what's working, what isn't, and the technologies and human skills making it possible now. None of this is all about future, it's what we're doing right now. We're looking at this growing trend with fans and what this means for sports entertainment content. So let me just introduce our esteemed panel. On the far end here, we've got Mr. Colin McKevitt from Badger & Coombs. Badger & Coombs is a trailblazing digital media production company with a sharp focus on innovation and inclusivity. And then we have Duncan from Buzz 16. Buzz 16 is a sports, media and entertainment production company, experts in production, monetization and distribution. Then we have Abis from Dizplai, and Dizplai, a technology company and a media experience business transforming the way brands, rights holders and broadcasters interact and engage with their audiences through socially connected content. And finally, we've got Joshua Barnett from Afterparty Studios. Afterparty Studios are an award-winning creative production company who sit at the rendezvous, great word, of where YouTube meets mainstream. So we're going to start with the interactive question, if we can, just to sort of set the scene a little bit, kind of what you guys think. So if we can go to the Slido. If you've voted already, wow. So 70% of you, the question was, which of the following best describes how you usually consume live sports content? Highlights only with friends. I don't consume live content. Oh, and that is changing. Brilliant. I love real-time stats. Interactive stream or radio. No one's on radio anymore. Okay, interesting. So predominantly it's... no, hang on. It's not highlights only. We need to... What is that top one? Traditional broadcast. We can't actually see it. So that's traditional broadcast. 71% of you. So that's pretty representative of you in the studio. In the auditorium today. Guys, do you think these answers reflect some of the challenges we have in sports broadcasting with the answers we've got there, or do you think it's pretty clear-cut?
Just trying to look at the age of the audience.
Yeah, I think it just reflects the audience, and that's not... I mean, I'm part of that audience, right? So I don't think it's necessarily a surprise. But if I think about like some of the people that we work with, who, you know, the Mark Goldbridge of this world, he'd probably tell you that it's the exact opposite of that, but that he's reaching a different audience with it, right? And it's a different kind of content, and I think it's a rich tapestry, and there's lots of different ways that you can create content that these guys will tell you.
I mean, does it actually reflect some of the decisions, like in terms of the bias towards one? Does that still predominantly how you think in terms of traditional broadcast reception, like in terms of what the watch-along content that you're like creating?
Look, I think the fact that the question is, consuming live sports content.
Yeah.
The majority of live sports content is on linear, right? They're the ones that are paying the big bucks for the rights and have got the majority of it. So there's no surprise that that's the case. But yeah, I think it was interesting what was said earlier around the two-screen piece or second-screen viewing, and because that's ultimately where you then expect these others to come in on the second screen. But I love the fact that it was a case. It's not a second screen; it's another screen. We've got to stop looking at it like that, and because I think that that would reflect first screen viewing, then second screen viewing. But it's absolutely shifting towards a case of just loads of screens.
Yeah, it's not one or the other, right? Like again, citing Mark, he'll tell you that people are watching the game on Sky or whatever country they're in, right? Whoever has the rights to it. But at the same time, they're watching him as well on another screen, and it's just another screen, and it's some people use an alternate commentary, some use it's just another perspective, some use it because they feel like they're, like I said this the other day, down the pub with some mates, and it feels like a conversational experience. They still want to watch the game though, but they're just consuming different kinds of ways.
ironically, I've just realised there's a second screen there with that on it. So
Oh.
I'll stop going like that.
Me trying to-
It's right there.
Big
Break
shout
my
out to
neck
the
looking
guys.
behind me. There's one right here. Christ. I need to do this job again.
They just changed it, so yeah.
Right, so let's start this great panel session off properly. So, guys, why have watch-alongs grown in popularity, do you think? What needs are they servicing for fans that perhaps wasn't previously? Colin?
So, well, straight away, I think the whole point is a digital sports summit, yeah? So we're talking about how digital enables that to happen, that shared experience and stuff like that. And I think when people can't be in the stadium, they can still be in the stadium. And I think that's why it does a good job.
Great.
Yeah, exactly that. I think we all want to just be closer to the action now. You know, I think we're beyond, like you said, like second screen, another screen. That's going to be a continued trend, and more than ever, we just want engagement. We want interaction. We want to feel like we're having some impact on the sport we're watching, whether that's sort of live or with your pals. So I think it's just we all in life. I think all of us are just naturally wanting to get closer to everything and sort of be in the moment.
But sorry, just to add that, obviously, what it allows individuals, platforms, whatever, to be involved in the conversation in something that they haven't got the rights to. So that they can be involved and feel a part of and speak to their audience about something that ultimately they've not paid for.
And and there's a whole community feel to it, and it really sounds really wanky to say this, right? It's kind of like, but humans like to do things with other humans, and that's a different way of doing it. But the digital distribution of this allows people to come together, all walks of life, wherever they are in the world. I think like when Man United and Tottenham played out that really poor final a few weeks ago, I think Mark had about 2.5 million people watch his content across the day itself, and that's just like one creator in a room, pretty much talking to a screen all day. But how many more times is that multiplied? But there's a whole different experience happening elsewhere too, whether it's in person, whether that is with the main rights holder. It just allows for lots of different perspectives, and I think as much as he's talking to 2.5 people, people feel like he's talking to them.
Yeah. So you're saying that experiences are proliferating in terms of where that content is being consumed, how people want to consume it. I think that neatly brings me on to sort of talking about specific examples. Can you guys share a recent example or watch-along experience either you've worked on or something you've seen, and perhaps one that worked really well and one that didn't? What the difference between the two are for you? Duncan?
I can share an example of something we did actually last year where we brought a fan into the actual broadcast via Skype. Remember that thing? That no longer exists. But we used Skype to bring the fan into the actual broadcast to talk to a player in the outfield during a game of cricket. So whilst that game was, and I think the game was at a ground up in Sedbergh School as well, so it was in the middle of nowhere. So complexities from a technical point of view. And then that fan was able to have a chat. Now don't forget, we overproduced that fan, so we made sure that it was going to go okay. But that engagement, that connection was really key, and we were doing that, and we don't think that we've seen that happen since either. So we should definitely do it more because it was a really good experience, and it connects the fan directly to the player as well, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we produce the Sidemen live stream football match.
Yep.
And, the nature of the stuff we do in general, we're always having a two-way with the audience because of the comments. But when you run that live, we are trust in the comments throughout that whole 3.5 hour. What is essentially like a 3.5 hour Sidemen Sunday.
I bet it's a Wild West, those comments.
It's a football match, but we listen to it, we're like, they're asking to see more of Logan Paul, they want to see a bit more of this. We're calling out people that are making donations to make them feel part of it. And it's, always tweaking as you go, which is a great experience. And I mean, not that it's not such a good experience, but that you go from like the dizzying heights of a Sidemen match, and then we ran a live football match for Super 6 last year with still some quite big talent, but I think they were quite surprised at just how few people you can really drag to watch live sport even on YouTube. So they saw the 2.5 million views that we get live concurrence on the Sidemen match, and look, we did 30,000-40,000 live views on a random Monday, I think it was at Millwall Football Club, which for us that was like amazing, to try and pull people in to give up their time. But I think that was almost a bit of an expectation of, it's not maybe as easy as someone like the Sidemen can make it seem in our space.
Yeah, so I've got a decent example of I suppose actually I was going to ask the question back around, what is a watch-along? Because I think that's a really good example, right, where technically that's not a watch-along, but the reality is it's a watch-along because people are watching and they're engaging with each other whilst doing it, and it's just, 'cause a traditional watch-along, as I would think about it, is Soccer Saturday on Sky Sports, right, who were the pioneers of the watch-along. And we're talking about it now, and that was done back in, I mentioned this on the sort of briefing call we had, right? I mean, that was the original watch-along. That was 20 years ago with George Best. So it's like, this isn't new, but so Buzz 16, we're the business behind The Overlap. For those of you who don't know The Overlap, it's a YouTube channel hosted by Gary Neville, which is growing into sort of a YouTube network now. We're getting different sports and bits, but we actually did a traditional watch-along. Was it last season?
You did it with us.
We did, yeah. So, but look, you asked ones that have gone well and ones that haven't gone so well. I would consider that in both, because it was our first go at it. There were some brilliant moments. It was engaging. It was fun. It was chaos at times, but also there was loads that could have been better. And it was really interesting. Again, knowing I was at Sky Sports for 19 years, so I know what the work and the level of effort that needs to go into creating Soccer Saturday and that traditional watch along, and what we had, to be able to deliver that. And one of the really simple things that were missing was the bloody audio. Again, we didn't have the rights, so you couldn't even just stream the crowd effects in on the watch along. And boy, did you miss it! So there were some real sort of what felt like flat moments. But to fill those gaps when the guys aren't as engaged during a whole 90-minute watch-along. Because again, Soccer Saturday, brilliant, 'cause you can bounce to different moments and what have you. But when you're sat watching one game, you need to have stuff to talk about. You need to make sure you're filling those gaps, because there's not something going on the pitch, every second.
I think sort of the creators of the world, so the Marks, the Robbies at Arsenal as well, they're not necessarily the personalities that those people are. They've got a bit more latitude of how they talk to the fans and with the fans as well. There's an expectation of how they're going to talk with the fans, and you'll find that with your talent, right? That Gary would never want to do that, or Jamie would never want to do that, certainly not publicly. And so they're allowed to do more, and they're expected to do more in a way that I don't think they could on that. You've got to do it in a different kind of way. Right? There's an expectation in terms of the production that creators don't necessarily have. Look, everyone wants to do it properly. But we're finding more obviously we're talking about watch-alongs here, that the people we work with, we work with a number of Premier League teams now, sports federations as well, and the way that we're working with them is because, look, the reality is a media organisation like a Sky or someone like that, they don't have, look, they have big schedules, right, but it's not infinite. They're not going to tell the narrative of your particular sport or your particular team. The digital distribution of content now allows you to actually, make that window larger, go really deep on your sport, go behind the lifestyle of the sport, the individuals in the sport, tell your narrative and allow fans to be part of that narrative as well and have that conversation with you, that it's not the media organisation's job to necessarily do that. It's your way of doing things. 20 years ago, you would have tried to create your own channel and get a number on Sky. Well, you don't have to do that now because you've got YouTube and TikTok and all the other ways of doing it. And I think that's the opportunity that I see for rights owners. And don't get me wrong, like Sky are in the room here, they do that too because you do a lot of stuff with them.
Yeah, I almost feel like that segues. We have a show with Sky Sports called Scenes, which is essentially like an elevated match day vlog that we shoot. A few key fixtures throughout the sort of Premier League season. We're actually looking at some other shoulder sports, but that brings sort of a younger audience closer to the action, using the unfettered access that Sky Sports gives you. And I think Sky Sports came to us not the season just gone, the one before, with a kind of trying to hit a next gen audience using the access we have, because they felt like they were starting to lose touch with the younger audience, and it was seen to be, I think, a bit stuffy, Sky Sports, and they wanted to really find a way to engage and connect, and we did that. And again, it's not quite watch along, but we are in the heart of the action. We're up at big games with big talent, from the creative space, from the Sky Sports stable of amazing presenters and commentators and pundits, and similarly, we can't show the live footage that we're watching on the pitch, but we'll show all the reactions and kind of everything around it. And again, it's just a way to really extend the rights that Sky Sports have and to continue the conversation way beyond the match itself.
So talking about content production, we touched on it quite a lot on the answers in that particular question. But do you think that there is a shift or a secret sauce almost that, in terms of producing watch-alongs, that perhaps less polish is more now, or people like that kind of more visceral, in the moment content that isn't as well produced? Like, do you think that's an element as to why it's more popular?
I think it'd be good to look at how we align to the brand that we're doing as well to do that. I think that's very important. Actually, we talked about it on the briefing call, didn't we, about the difference between the challenge, well, not the challenge, but what you were doing with the overlap and what we were doing, because we were born out of COVID. That was the whole point of what we were doing. When we first started, we were doing a thing called United We Stream up in Manchester, where people weren't predominantly paying attention to the news at 6. And we then started looking at alternative media theory to find a way of communicating with people that don't use those traditional methods of getting their news. And they were out raving, and they shouldn't have been out raving. So Andy Burnham kind of rushed and said, right, how do we speak to that generation, and how do we keep them indoors? And we said, well, they like to party, so let's do some hacienda 24-hour parties and things like this. And actually the traditional part of what the hacienda was all about, for those that were there, it was certainly not polished. So, but it did a good job nevertheless. But then we got on to talking about the fact that it was those authentic, immersive media experiences that we were generating during United We Stream and during COVID that actually created a tangible connection between the audience and what we were doing. And I think in the digital space that's really important, but then in some places you start connecting brands to that, and you start then trying to monetize it and commercialize it, then you need to start thinking in the production realm of what that does. So there is probably stepping on what you were probably going to say about it as well in regards to that crossover as well, which is quite important.
Yeah, I think it's a careful one around the sort of less produced or not the quality not being as high. I think because the quality and the level of production's got to be there in order to deliver to the audience that you're targeting. That can look different to what we'd consider well-produced, high-quality content, if that makes sense. There's still a hell of a lot of thought and a lot of sort of manipulating and shaping.
I think Sky, Sky's got a lot, certainly sports, to answer for the people have an expectation of how sports will be produced now, very much because what Sky did with the Premier League back in the day, it has gone forward now, and even, like I said, Mark with us, we're chatting with him in a month, we're challenging other going, how do we move his medium on? But that's not going to be making it more poorly. He wants to step it up because he wants to attract more brands and sponsors because of the credibility around the content he's making. Yeah,
when we launched the overlap, I think I've mentioned this previously, but we had a bit of a battle on our hands around what the quality of the content should look like. There was a view of this needs to be really raw, mobile phone-led, content. And we were pretty strong on the fact this needs to be still premium content. There's a high level talent. I hate that word. I still want to come up to a better word. On-screen talent of a certain level, and it needs to look right. It needs to look polished. And actually, it's how they are on set, on camera, and how they're reacting. And it'll be another ding for the authentic word that I think was mentioned earlier. But the authenticity from them that they potentially can't give on a linear broadcaster, right? Paid for rights, and they've got a brand reputation to consider. Whereas they can be a bit more themselves, but the level of production and the quality of what you're trying to create it's still got to hit home. I think people don't want to watch shit.
So just add to that, that's the whole point of what we're doing with Lancashire Cricket, and we're sort of producing really high quality live streams of the cricket matches. We've set an example, and we've set a bar for that for the rest of the ECB's cricket county game, because it's that accessibility to the equipment and the technology and the skill sets and stuff. We're still producing that as a high quality stream, and luckily enough Sky then took that feed off us, and then they broadcast it on Sky Cricket and stuff like that sometimes. So that there's a challenge there because other people don't have that skill set and technology in their clubs to do the same. So the world of cricket at the moment is a little bit of a wild west in that sense, but that if you're going to a Lancashire feed, it'll be of a high quality. If you go somewhere else, I won't mention the names. If you go somewhere else, then not so much.
My question was quite leading because, coming from a traditional TV background, the interactive component was always something to be considered additional to and not part of the main show, whereas watch-alongs are very much the two together all the time. So it's like now these are becoming more popular, the blend of the two how is that becoming the sort of the core content experience where it's not just one, like you'd have like the Extra Factor on ITV2, which is all the interactive bits and people saying comments, and the main show's got none of that whatsoever. All right, you had the voting, but nothing kind of interactive. Now you've got this consistent blend that fans are clearly loving because they've got a right to reply, and it's creating a new stream of content that's not traditional, and it's a blend of the two. So it's how you successfully do that within the tools that you've got, how audiences want to receive it. So my question is really, what is the tools that you need to produce really good watch-along content? Like what's the best tools to use within that?
A good editorial narrative, like listen to the audience, because they will tell you would explain that they will tell you what they want and what they don't want. I think there's got to be a certain level of production with it, right? Because like you said, they don't want to watch it, and I think it's good when you can connect the different, what we call it, different platforms, different screens. And I know we're talking very much about watch-alongs here, but obviously Scott's over there from Sky, and I would say this, right? But what we've done with boxing and the interactive boxing scorecard, we have connected the mobile app to the screen, wherever that screen is, and we've had probably close to 1 million fans who've scored fights in the time that we've been doing it together, because they feel like they're in some kind of editorial control of what's going on, and the presenters and the pundits or experts talk about how the fans are scoring it, whether they're right or wrong, and it's sort of that antidote to because the judges never score it right. So it's giving it an extra dimension what it's doing. It's just baked into the production right now. It's just part of it. It's not an add-on, as you were saying earlier.
So you're saying that fans are more primed now to want lean-forward experiences in general. So they're more ready to sort of go, yeah, well, I want this to be lean-forward. I don't just want to be passive, or have the option at least.
Can I? I'm going to counter that ever so slightly, if I may, because I think. Well, do you know what? Because I love my boxing, and I watch a lot of boxing. Watch a lot of boxing on Sky, and I think there's a balance, right? Because it's. And I've really got to be careful I don't cheese off a load of my ex-Sky colleagues here. I need to work out who's in it. I can see Scott and James, you're not there anymore. I love the viewers' scorecard, but I also want to hear the bloody expert scorecard as well, right? I don't want to know, and this is me, traditional 46-year-old fella sat in his lounge watching the boxing. I want to know what the co-commentator scorecard looks like, and I don't feel I get that enough. So I think it's gone a little bit too far, and you're getting the viewer's scorecard up after every round, and you're not getting the expert scorecard. And it's great, get the viewers, compare it to that. So again, get that balance right. And my view is it maybe gone a little bit too far. Please don't tell them. So Scott.
Well, to be fair, that's something that we will both want as well. So we can talk to producers about that.
A little bit of feedback, free of charge.
But that's a really good point, because where does it sit? Does it sit in Sky, or should that sit somewhere else in the digital space? And you can have that multi-channel, multi-output thing going on, different things serving different platforms. If you make a look at that top 12 that we saw at the start of the day, you don't have to send the same content to every single one of those. They can be manipulated differently to appeal to the different audience types and demographics that are on that. And if we take I'm going to bore everybody in the room, so pull me off the stage if you have to, yeah. But yeah, but if we take a look at alternative media theory, and these are the age demographics of this room. Remember pirate radio and fanzines back in the day. It wasn't about the polished product at the end. It was about everybody within that subculture of group following that journey to create something. So where does that sit? Well, it doesn't necessarily sit on Sky Sports. At that point, it actually sits on the digital side of Sky Sports, and it sits on those platforms like Snapchat and TikTok, where those audiences can feel part of that user-generated journey. So then when they are part of that, they then feel more inclined to trust it and have a created loyalty towards it, and then you can start selling them stuff.
Well, I think we're establishing that this is a really pivotal time in the industry, because there are different opinions even in this panel here today. But there's an article that went out this morning from the Ad Wanted, and it said that it's the first time ever that mobile viewing has overleaped TV viewing, like in terms of consumption. So where watch-alongs sit within that, it's people's perception of what they are need to be. I think it's an education piece of like what sort of quality of the content is, because I think there's still this not misconception, but their experiences with sort of pirate radio content are getting to, seeing really visceral, raw streamed live content compared to sort of more heavily produced stuff which you guys are doing, I think there is this different kind of understanding and expectation of what that content can be, and I think that's why it makes it really exciting of where we can shape that moving forward and what you guys are trying to do within that.
So I'm going to bow to Joshua's superior knowledge on this. Like, is the misconception though the consumer or the people making the content, right? Because I think the consumer know exactly what they want generally and will go towards it.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, man. We're audience first in everything we do. Like I said, we're up in the comments, and it's a real two-way conversation with the audience. And I guess what I love about our space is, we take the learnings and we iterate as we go. We don't wait to the end of a season and go, oh, how did that season go? Let's now change and tweak it for the next one. We are literally, video by video, episode by episode. We talk quite a lot recently in a few presentations we've done about even our show, Scenes with Sky, where the thumbnail that we did on episode 1 and the style compared to the thumbnail from episode 23 is completely different. The first episode was sort of very manipulated and highly kind of produced, and then actually what we've seen in the iteration through the platform up until recently was it needed to feel a bit more real and a bit more in the moment, a bit more like a screenshot from the video and stuff. So yeah, for us, man, we're constantly listening to the audience, but also the algorithms that we're kind of serving.
So, do you want to respond to that? Anyone?
No, I was agreed.
So the question I have off the back of that, which is a really nice segue, is so you're obviously able to change content on the fly, pretty much, like episode to episode. So is there any data sets you're using to shape those decisions, or is it just more about how it feels from week to week of what work do you feel from a production perspective?
Yeah, I think it's again, because we mostly exist online, chronically online. All these platforms have such great stats built into them. So yeah, on YouTube, we're very much looking at the views, but the watch time, the peaks. On social platforms, we're looking at the saves, the shares, and yeah, we're really trying to understand which drop-off points are in videos that we need to kind of look at and address. Certainly for scenes, or we work with Sky Bet on a channel called League of 72, where we go to different EFL clubs up and down the country, and again we're looking to kind of tweak the format on the go, video to video, to see where the peaks and troughs are in the content.
Anyone else using sort of data sets?
I mean, without wishing to repeat, it's exactly that. I think the key is the ability, and again, it was mentioned earlier, the beauty of YouTube is the data available instantly as to who's watching, when they're dropping off, all these things, and the ability just to react to that straight away, as you say, the very next episode, or even in episode, depending on how it's going out, if you're on a delay. And I think, look, I'm going right back to when I was at Sky Sports, back sort of a long time ago. But we pretty much made telly for ourselves, and there wasn't a great deal of interaction and sort of customer feedback. That changed. Don't get me wrong. Loads of customer-led information as to how programs are shaped now on linear as well. But again, it's still relatively slow how you can react to that. But this is just change. Just change. If it's not working, change.
Making telly for ourselves is a great comment, actually, because we'll give the audience the opportunity to make telly for themselves, and that's the whole point of where technology is going. And if you just take a look at the latest advances in YouTube with the watchalongs that YouTube are bringing in, the multi-screen stuff, and the world of those social media channels are all competing with each other for those eyeballs. And I think the opportunity for people to be able to take that object-based media journey and media consumption behaviour on there is really, really key. Yeah, it's brilliant.
So with the data sets, are you looking at kind of the attention spans and retention of kind of audiences and how to kind of hold on to them for longer? Is that data more useful, or is it problematic in some respects?
Man, watch time is everything right now, because the more you keep people watching, more engaged, the more you get pushed up in the algorithms of these platforms, and also we're led to believe
the more
that
money you make.
Comments.
Sorry, carry on.
Comments, again, we're trying to push for it because we believe there's an AI that tracks for positive sentiment in videos. So yeah, the more people are watching, the more people are engaging, commenting, sharing, the more you're gonna, garner favour in the algorithms.
We talk a lot to some of our clients about the post as an ecosystem as well. Sometimes a lot of brands are posting things on social media channels and then leaving them, and that's it, done. And then the audience is in there, the media consumers are in there asking questions, and you could actually sell things to them in those comments. And people are missing that opportunity massively. It should be interesting to find out actually how many wasted opportunities, monetization opportunities there are in the comments, to be honest.
Yeah, and then more and more we're looking at how do we off-platform people from all of those channels, because look, YouTube and the like, they expect you to do that anyway. They're surprised how few people think about how do you get those people off the platform into your own ecosystem and turn that into your own data and own that yourself. So that we are thinking about how do we, not just obviously using the comments that are within the platform itself, but how do we create our own digital tools that can be embedded with any client's platform. Some of that might be simple comments and polls, but some of that might be more gamified experience, like what we do with Sky, but for other people too. So we work a lot with PDC on the darts, and we've had about 100,000 people that have predicted outcomes of darts, either through fantasy or match by match themselves over the last period of time. And ultimately, that's all data that PDC then own. And actually, because they feel like they're getting something in return, there's a value exchange, they have a really, really high opt-in rate that they can go and market to for everything else.
Can I also add, because it was to a bit of a point earlier, and just on this one, we've not spoken too much about it, but talent. We're really looking at talent that are on the rise, engagement those particular talent are getting. I think as much as you can have an amazing productions set up and produce great content, you're kind of nothing without the talent and the audience they can help bring. So I think as much as you've got to be on these platforms and exist in the right areas and produce it well, man, you've got to be bringing the right talent and working with the right talent that can really cut through to the audience you're looking to go after.
But bringing that sort of talent, that's one of my next questions, bringing that sort of level of talent into the production, can that sort of make or break in terms of production like cost? Because if you're bringing a real serious big baller into the mix to sort of help with numbers, like how do you get that balance right?
It doesn't always have to be the biggest. I mean, in terms of pound for pound, there's some small to medium weight, creators that we work with. I mean, even, Specs, we've worked with for a few years. If anyone knows who Specs Gonzalez is, he's been on the rise, the last couple of years. We started working with him like 4 years ago, just when he was starting to pop off and we were seeing some mad engagement in terms of sort of views and comments and all that kind of stuff. V's the amount of followers he was having on platforms. So I think you've just got to get in early, keep a scope on the people that are breaking through. That will be super cost effective because they have such a highly engaged audience at that smaller level. Whereas for how much you might pay for bigger talent, where some of their engagement's dropped off because they're busy spending their millions on, yachts and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes you're better off going, a couple layers down on that.
There's new ones coming along all the time, right? Because everyone sees this opportunity and thinks, I want to be a content creator, and that's what Joshua's looking for, right?
Yeah, talent-wise as well, and we'll probably talk about women's rugby a lot as well, is the players themselves. The talent is in the actual sports stars themselves, and the players taking part in these things. And there's so much amazing evidence out there with the women's rugby and the players doing the TikTok stuff and all that. And then you've got traditional heads going, why is that England player and that Welsh player doing a TikTok dance together? One of them has just lost a game of rugby in the Six Nations, and then there's hundreds of fans dancing behind them in the stands after the game. And there's your audience. There's the people that you need to be connected to.
Some of the Lionesses now, they've started podcasts as well. There's a few different ones, and Mary Earp's doing what she's doing now. She's become she's crossing over, becoming this lifestyle and culture about her.
Well, right? It's even like, it's mad to think that the Olympics that just is the first time that the athletes were allowed to jump on socials in and around the Olympics and in an athlete village. I mean, it's mental. But
if you can't cash, you just chuck Snoop Dogg in.
You just got to mention Alona Mar, and that gives you all the evidence you need. You know what I mean? She's got millions and millions of followers.
We talk about for that, like we talk about it. For years and years within sport, we've had this sort of like unobtainable aspiration, the Bugattis, the private jets. Whereas now, I think audiences, not just younger, but audiences in general, they want obtainable aspiration. I, as much as I love seeing the England team play, do I? God, don't know. Sometimes, mate, trust me, man. I was having a good old laugh and giggle with the nation when you saw them on the floaties in the swimming pool, And that's kind of what we want a bit more of now, putting the names to faces and personalities and characters.
And the loss. When the game's lost, when I saw it on TikTok as it happens, when champagne is not dripping from your ceiling, you want to see the measure of what somebody's about. And I want to see that in my sports stars, and I want to see that tangible connection to when I'm having a bad day. I know why I'm having a bad day. I know why they're having a bad day. We should be able to see that. And I think sometimes in the past, and don't get me wrong, I get it, sometimes there's a lot of money involved in protecting the brands of those sports stars. It makes perfect sense to keep that away sometimes. But in certain situations, I think the younger generation, those younger audiences, they need to connect to that. I think they do.
Well, I think that you've just highlighted, I think, the stark difference between traditional TV content with sports and this, more watch-along kind of interactive content, is that there isn't that kind of more relatable imagery on screen. It's very much it follows a formula, and this is more disruptive in the sense of how it's being presented. It makes the stars feel more relatable. You feel like they're all your friends almost, that you can sit alongside them. And I think that's where that disconnect is with the content between traditional and what particularly young audiences are engaged with, because they feel like it's more accessible and speaks to them. So with that stat I mentioned earlier, how do you see the two kind of converging, or do you see it as like it's going to be watch-alongs more, and that's going to grow in popularity, and the kind of linear is still going to carry on declining?
I think, John, you've given a good example already. The stuff you've done with Sky, right? That it is converging. Like, I think it's funny because you got the media companies want to do more stuff like the teams and the feds and the creators. The creators, how many creators do we end up with each year now want to be on Strictly? It's kind of like, they started out in a certain kind of way, but actually they still want that credibility. I still quite like to go on linear. And you're just seeing the crossover between all of them. And I see a great ecosystem that everyone's pushing everyone in a different kind of way. And it's not all the same, but it's great because it's not all the same. We want it to be different, but I think everyone's learning from everyone.
Why did Radio 1 happen? Why do we have BBC Radio 1? Because they wanted to kill the pirate radio. I'm a big pirate radio fan, sorry. But that's why we have BBC Radio 1, do you know what I mean? So that, and it's kind of, they had to protect, but the pirates still exist, and they exist in a digital space and all that kind of thing. It's about, I think it'll be different. I think technology makes that a different thing happening. So that coexisting thing, I think you're right, but it's about where it sits. I think that's the fascinating thing to look for.
I think, but you see it now, in football and stuff. Pre-season games. Some of the players are now, mic'd up, camered up. I do wonder before too long, when you're going to see some of that. You've seen brands like Google playing in the football space, and there's a phone by the side of the pitch that the player's scoring and running over to grab the phone, and that's being captured on the live sport, and then you're seeing, Van Dijk on the phone gassing up, celebrating the goal, and. I'd love to see it in the Cyber match at Wembley this year. We had a live selfie stick. So when it came to the penalty shootout, a player, it was known, if you want to go up and grab the live selfie stick to react in it, and Max Fosh, lo and behold, someone scored and he reacted and picked up the selfie stick that we beamed to live from the gallery.
Awesome.
And it was just such an amazing moment. I do think we're going to start to see a bit more of that, creeping in. We can't. Look, these are high-level athletes across all these sports that are paid a lot of money. There's high stakes. But I think we're going to start to see just a little bit more softening to bring the audience in a little bit more. Otherwise, they're going to lose viewership to people watching watch-alongs and the catch-up content.
I think it's as you say, we'll see more of it. I think it's definitely happening already. I think great example being CBS Champions League coverage, who I think have got that crossover brilliantly. My 15-year-old lad loves. He watches the. It's an American product, right? But you can watch it online on socials and the short form clips in the studio. But Micah Richards, Carragher, and Thierry Henry in that studio, 3 old school football pundits in suits behind the big desk, but having a right old giggle and doing some really really crazy stuff. And he loves watching it. So. That's crossing over into that linear space already, and I think, but both can exist. Both absolutely can exist. And one really important thing that I've not mentioned yet, but it's no surprise. But the majority of these things gets watched by the generation that are watching it because it's free. It's available. They can just open up their computers, their phones, their laptops. It's there, right? And you just find it, you watch it. There's no subscriptions. You haven't got to log in. You know what we're doing. It's just available. So that's a big part of it. Let's not be mistaken.
So Cocker was saying the same before about the neglect that the Championship rugby level's got. You can do it there. So take those opportunities to the lower league games, the lower level games, the opportunity for
Exactly,
women's
there's
sport.
less restriction over what you can do, so actually you can push the boundaries a little bit in terms of what you do.
The opportunity for women's sport is massive to exploit the digital space. It's exactly where it needs
Innovation
to be.
that they can
innovate and grow women's sport is perfect. This is a perfect place for that. The audience, no disrespect to Sky and TNT, for the rugby, for example, they don't want to spend a 45 quid subscription, monthly subscription, whatever it is, to watch one game of rugby a week. They want to see all of the rugby all week. And I think taking it to that digital space where the audience and the media consumers live is perfect for that. And you can do it as a marketing exercise if you attach it to a brand. It doesn't have to be a broadcast exercise. So therefore it is free, but you glean all the data out of that, and then you can monetize that data.
Yeah, I think disruption, particularly with women's sport, is something that really it should be really the focus of where all this interactive content is going, because I think there's a different type of audience. I mean, we see it with some of the content in venue and how audiences, families particularly, are going and attending those matches as opposed to sort of the more traditional male-skewed audiences for the men's game. So it's just a really interesting landscape in terms of the types of audiences that are watching that content. I'm conscious we've only got a few minutes left, so I just quickly want to ask the final Slido question, if we can, just to kind of get your views on where the future is heading with content. So if you scan the QR code, you could answer this following question. Which of these were the most important ingredient for the future of live sports? So given what the guys have said on the panel, or maybe you interpret your own views, is it personalisation and custom feeds, authentic interactivity and viewer participation, influencers, fostering global fandom, immersive tech experiences, fan ambassadors, or none of the above? Give you a few seconds to make your guess. It's like they need the fastest finger first music on Who It's a Millionaire. It's a good watch, this.
No, we'll give you...
Yeah, it's dynamic. I love it.
We'll
It's
give
interactive. You can't do an interactive panel without interactivity.
The person that put none above will give you, a couple more minutes to change that.
So, yeah, as people
Come on,
are voting...
authentic interactivity.
So, personalisation, we haven't actually discussed
I'd love to know what the none of the above is and what the other would be.
But none of the... Yeah. So, personalisation and custom feed seems to be the headline answer. So, do you want to comment on that, guys? Like, where do we haven't really talked about it much within the content of the session today, but
we're seeing more. I mean, I think look, there's certain rights that are, I think, going to probably stay where they are, right, in the linear world. There's lots of the rights, and we've seen with what Tim Cock was saying earlier in terms of what he's doing with rugby now. Let's call it second, third tier, and I think we're going to start seeing more and more where creators who have big followings are going to take free to air rights and distribute themselves, but I think we're going to see multiple creators taking the same thing but with personalisation of it, so the channel looks different to them and there'll be a different experience for them to the other person, but essentially the content itself, which is the source content, will be the same, but they'll put their own spin on it, and some will be picture in picture, some will just want to talk over it, some will be running interactivity in it, some will actually just want some stats with it, and the different creators have different ways of doing their own content, and they'll have that choice, and it's things that we're looking at the moment, and we're having a number of conversations about it. We won't be the only people thinking about it. We're seeing more and more of that. We worked on something called Icons Golf, where we did a bit of that earlier this year, which was like a Ryder Cup format for ex-footballers. And we had various different creators around the world taking the feed and doing their own thing with it. Now they could, because it was Icons Golf, it wasn't attached to any particular federation, they could do what they wanted with it. But I think we'll see more and more with that, and I think what Tim's doing, what he talked about earlier, is great to see, because I think it's going to start opening up that opportunity, and then you'll see that expand even more. It'll take a few years, but it's going in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, my simple brain way of looking at it is that, I think we're saying the same thing. You've got a world feed of a live sport event, and then it's a case of, if you imagine all the different hosts from around the world that take that world feed and then do their own thing for their audience for it, ultimately, you're doing that, but you're letting the audience choose, personalise it themselves. And it comes back to one of my, my big, I was probably going to use it as my little takeaway at the end, but there cannot be one-size-fits-all approach with any of this. Many have made that mistake, me included, in the past, trying to serve, a show my dad will want to watch and a show that my 15-year-old lad will want to watch. You can't do it. You've got to have choice, and if they can choose it themselves, even better.
You definitely let the data do a lot of the heavy lifting here as well. Like, object-based media methodology is a key driver to serving those individual media experiences, and you can use that methodology to serve a specific advert for a specific person in a specific place at a specific time. And you can just do that, and that value is just perfect. You know what I mean? So I think that personalisation and stuff in that way, we need to start using that a bit more.
Personalisation, though, doesn't necessarily need to be audience-driven, right? It could just be a personalised experience for different audiences. Because you find often as well, and obviously this is from someone who works in interactivity, lots of people don't want to actually have interactivity.
Tell me what I want.
Yeah, but they want choice in terms of how they consume that content.
Yeah, so choice is being offered more options.
Different ways of watching it, yeah.
That are curated, or...
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah. So we've got 10 seconds left, so I'm aware that we've probably run over now. Brilliant. Can you just, with this great audience that we've got here, what would be your kind of lasting comment that you'd leave with them to kind of be more ambitious with watch-alongs sort of moving forward in this space? Oh, silence.
I don't know. Listen, man, like anything,
I
think you just got.
You said 10 seconds. We were all worried.
We were on the bell.
On your shoulders, Christian.
It's so easy to say, man, but like, just give, test and learn, give stuff a try. We love this whole ethos from Mark Zuckerberg of move fast and break things. That's the way that he would make code. Just try it, throw it out on Facebook, and if it falls down. So we coined that phrase and flipped it to move fast and make things. That's the world that we're in. Give it a try, learn, fuck up a bit. It doesn't work. Don't get an audience. Don't get just try it, because once you've tried it and you've almost ripped off that Band-Aid, you won't regret it, man. It's so refreshing. Change is so good. Just give it a try. Stop talking about it.
Try it, don't think about it. Give it a go, dive in.
For me, embrace the creator economy in terms of how they can help you to reach your audience as well. It's not a one-size-fits-all, as we said. They will help you to get to your audience. And the reality is they'll probably make your content more engaging than you will yourself, because they're really good at that.
To sort of classic approach, but know your audience and know your subject. And so exactly what you're saying there. It's a case of, do not try and serve 4 different audiences with the same thing. I'm saying the same thing, but in a different way. There's no one size fits all. There you go.
Failure's not final. That's it. That's all I'm going to say.
So learning opportunity.
Failure's not final. Love it.
Failure is not
final. On that note, guys, thank you very much for your participation. It's been a pleasure to host. Please put your hands together for the panel. Thank you.